through the relevant facts and says the evidence could support an inference that the president was aware of these facts at the time of Cohen's false statements to Congress. It doesn't say the president told him to lie, but the president knew he was lying when he made those false statements to Congress. Some of the evidence, just in this section alone, is incredibly damning about the president's behavior.
It also suggests he could have been a target the whole time of the obstruction probe, which is why he refused to ever answer any questions. It suggests that the Justice Department may have viewed him as a subject of the conspiracy with Russia and a target of the obstruction probe, which was why he never, ever was going to answer any questions about obstruction.
Ari Melber has been doing a deep dive on the portion of this that deals with the Trump Tower meeting. And again, as a veteran lawmaker said to me months ago, any meeting you're having during the course of a presidential campaign that requires a Russian translator, stop and ask yourself if you're doing the right thing.
I think that's well put, Brian. We've been digging into this as we promised to look at the facts, not the bar depictions. And I want to go into 2 points here. One is potentially bad news for Mr. Barr, and one is good news for Donald Trump Jr. What we see here is the way the Trump Tower meeting with Russians offering assistance was investigated and was ultimately legally analyzed. And I want to give the headline first, which is the good news for Donald Trump Jr. The Mueller report saying, taking into account the high burden, I'm reading, the high burden to establish the mental state in what they looked at this as a potential campaign finance prosecution, and the difficulty, they say, of the valuation, which I'll explain in a moment. Mueller writes, quote, we decided not to pursue criminal campaign finance charges against Donald Trump Jr. or other campaign officials for the events culminating in the June 9th meeting. Why that is important is it tells us how they looked at this issue. They looked at it as a potential, to put it in plain English, is that Donald Trump the high bar of a criminal charge, and that the office wasn't sure that they would be able to value that so-called quote dirt. If you say it is what it is, I love it. That
it
dirt
is my car.
wouldn't be able to value it high enough for the charge. That's good news for Donald Trump Jr. The other piece of reporting I want to share, Brian, is potentially bad news for Mr. Barr. It is the fact that as your reporters and our legal experts each other on what was under investigation. Mr. Barr used, quote, no collusion. And that very explicitly, they didn't look at this in a quote Barr field and need to go that far. And the final thing I want to share from my read, and I'll come back to you, as I told Trump lied to the office and to the Congress about their interactions with Russian-affiliated individuals and related matters. Those materially, those lies down the law.
And if you're a Democrat in Congress, you're thinking we have the remedy for that. We'll work. One a Russian, one an American. Take it from there.
Yeah, so I'm on page 140, and again, I'm keenly interested in the Russian counterintelligence aspects of this. They had no evidence of Americans, any Americans, engaged in the Russian efforts to meddle with the campaign. Yet on page 140, it says here, Manafort briefed Kalimnik. Now remember who Kalimnik is. He is someone with known or suspected ties to Russian intelligence. Manafort briefed Kalimnik on the state of the Trump campaign and Manafort's plan to win the election. That briefing encompassed the campaign's messaging and its internal polling data. According to Gates, it also included discussion of, quote, battleground states, which Manafort identified as Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Minnesota.
Wow.
Now, look, if you're handing internal strategy and polling data to a Russian intelligence-affiliated individual and you're naming the battleground states, what do you intend for that? For them to do with that information other than to help you and do something to aid the campaign. So when the Attorney General says absolutely no evidence of Americans aiding, abetting, engaged with Russia, meddling with us, it does not ring true by what I'm seeing here in the report.
Frank Figlizzi, there's a through line. When you read all of the accounts in Bob Woodward's book and Jim Comey's book about that meeting between the heads of America's intelligence agencies during the transition, when they all flew up to New York to go visit Donald Trump, Jim Comey described it as a meeting with, akin to meeting with Cosa Nostra, a mob family. They sat around, they asked not one question about what the Russians did to meddle in our election, and their interest even then in the transition was around making sure that not a single thing that came out about the Russian effort, the Russian operation, made it look like his win was illegitimate. That seems to run through how he governed as president. He remained completely disinterested in this Russian attack on the American democracy, totally blinded by almost an insatiable desire to prove that he won all by himself like a big boy, that he didn't ever want to understand what the Russians did. Is there anything in here that will just sort of hit this administration on the side of the head with a 2x4 and make abundantly clear that the Russian effort was so clear, so obvious, so deliberate, and that it is, as you said, so targeted that it has to be dealt with before another election comes around?
Yeah, I think that's the theme that I'm picking up on the so-called collusion portion of the report, is that we've got the repeated overtures and by the Russian government and receptivity on the part of Trump's people, and the detailed accounting, Nicole, and the impressive work of the FBI and intelligence community to ferret out how the GRU did this, how the GRU implanted their malware in the DNC and extracted this, and then all of the receptivity of those around this president. And then I just can't stop emphasizing enough, because it's just disturbing, our Attorney General mischaracterizing the findings here, that simply there was no collusion. It simply is not ringing true.
Frank, what about his responsibility? What about, where's the urgency about fixing the extent to which Russia is reaching in our society as we have this conversation? What has changed about this? Where's the enforcement?
Well, and if the president truly was thinking about public relations and spinning this properly and coming out as more credible than most people think he is, he would come out and announce a huge task force, a significant endeavor with resources behind it to make sure that this doesn't go another way as we approach the 2020 election. But I think Nicole hit it right on the head, which is, if he does that, he's trapped here. If he does that, in his mind, he somehow offers up the theory that my election was illegitimate. I delegitimize my selection of the American people if I even concede that Russia did something inappropriate here. So he feels trapped, when the reality is he could come out and kind of be a very credible individual and say, look, this terrible thing has come out. And we're going to fix it. And actually, it would be a little bit of positive spin of this report to say, don't look at the obstruction part. Let's look at what Russia did. Let's coalesce together against a common adversary and get this fixed. Yet we don't see that happen.
Ari Melber, let's talk about what this is. We keep talking about terms of a mob movie. You're in a section right now where the president put a hit on Robert Mueller.
That's correct. This is central to what you think Donald Trump did or didn't do. I think we're going to bring this back up here. Yep. This is a key piece of evidence. Let me read from the Mueller report. Substantial evidence supports the conclusion that the president went further than their defense, and in fact, Mueller says, in fact, directed Don McGahn, his White House counsel, to call Rosenstein, who we know is Mueller's boss, to have the special counsel removed. That would be the firing of Bob Mueller. That's something that was reported in the Times. Here we see Mueller found it. First, McGahn's clear recollection was that the president directed him to tell Rosenstein not only the conflicts existed, but also that, quote, Mueller
Y'all want something from Dunkin' Donuts?
Sure.
Sure.
This is the kind of evidence that may be of more interest to Congress than Attorney General Barr. This is the thing that everyone remembers from Nixon and the Saturday Massacre, because it actually happened. So when you remember what we heard this morning and what I think is going to be an issue going forward, Brian, did Donald Trump have the illicit intent to shut down the probe or not? This is the kind of evidence that obviously cuts against Donald Trump. The idea that he took overt acts to tell people, quote, according to the Mueller report, quote, Mueller has to go.
Don't move, because I need you to stick around to participate in the questioning of our next guest. We've been joined by Jay Sekulow, who is on the president's legal team. Counselor, thank you very much for joining us. My first question, I'm afraid, is going to verge on plain English. Where did the Attorney General get off with that characterization this morning, including 4 mentions that